President Grímsson, Minister, distinguished guests, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the history of Iceland and how the Icelandic people have been getting benefit from industrial development in the last 100 years. First to EFLA. EFLA is one of the 3 leading engineering companies in Iceland, totally Icelandic company, owned by the employees. And we have been working in Greenland as well as in other countries far away from Iceland, even in Indonesia, China. And this is possible even in 30 years, if the strategy is right and if you have the people with you. But you also need to have the know-how. In Greenland, we have been doing a lot of work for the municipalities, for the power companies, and for instance, we have been designing the recent power lines in Greenland, and our last large project here in Greenland is part of the design work for the extension of the Nuuk Harbour. In total, we are about 320 people in Iceland, and then we have about 100 people working abroad in offices from located in Norway down to Dubai. I promised you to tell you a little bit about the history of Iceland. We have had rapid changes in the last hundreds of years. And I decided to put this slide up because this shows in detail how things have changed. My father was born in the year of 1921 in a house like this on the left picture. House made of torf, and they heated the house even with torf. 100 years later, we have skyscrapers in the city of Reykjavik, and we are using renewable energy to heat up our houses and produce electricity for industry. This is development. But this comes not only coincidentally, it's a strategy. It's a bit of luck as well. And as you perhaps know, Iceland is well situated in the North Atlantic for this development. And the next slide will show you in few steps how this has happened. First of all, I like to point out establishment of universities in Iceland. The University of Iceland was established in the year of 1911, before we get totally independency from Denmark. That was a very important step in the history of Iceland. Much later, but in the 20th century, the establishment of the University of Reykjavik happened. But we have more universities in Iceland than those 2, but they are the biggest. But then we had the Second World War, and that was a time for changes in Iceland. We saw, let's say, more or less for the first time real money in our pockets. And we managed to save money during this period, and we managed to get our independence from Denmark. And that was because of the invasion of the Germans to Denmark, indeed, in the year of 44. But after the Second World War, we started to think about how to use this money we have in our pockets to develop the country after being free from Denmark. That was a hard time, but we managed to do. And part of right decisions was to educate people in the country. Not only educate those in Iceland, also send them abroad. Of course, most of those went to Denmark and still do, but we also send people to America, to Germany, and to other the Scandinavian countries. We used the money after the Second World War and after this period of thinking over to buy trawlers. And then we started indeed to be a fishing nation. And that was a big break, big difference in the history of Iceland. But then we started to fight again, fight with the English people catching in our waters. It took us a very long time to fight and get those out of our fishery zones and get the 250-mile zone. That means we have been fighting for Greenland and other nations on this earth to get those rights. And this is very important for us today. But I will not go through all of those points there, but it was a decision taken around 1964 to invite power-intensive industry to Iceland. That was indeed much earlier than tourism started in Iceland. The idea was to sell electrical energy and create jobs. And the first plant, aluminum plant, started in the year of '68. Most of you have seen it maybe. It's close to Reykjavik, on the way from the airport. Now we have 3 large aluminum plants in Iceland up and running. And they are indeed using most of our electricity we produce. They are securing income in US dollars, in Japan yen, and euros. They used to be a very big pillar in the economy, but now the tourism is the bigger pillar. And that is the new, let's say, the new wave of development in Iceland, that is tourism. But we are also facing a new industry in Iceland. Data centers are coming in, using our electricity. And we also see now silicium metal plants. And 2 are under construction, and 1 is in planning phase. And it's very interesting to see one of those plants, which is now under construction, that is located 3 kilometers north of the city of Húsavík, or the village of Húsavík. This plant will bring 126 jobs to the society. This is a German project. But we have problems because of the boom in the tourist sector and other sectors. They have to hire at least 50% of those workers from abroad. And they will most likely come from Poland, as so many others in Iceland. And in Iceland, the whole construction industry is now driven by Polish people and people from Lithuania. And a lot of those are also working in the fishing industry, fish processing industry. So without foreign laborers, we will have problems. But the strange thing is, regarding to this factory in Húsavík, is that Húsavík is the 2nd largest whale watching center in Iceland. This is a very interesting case showing us that industry and tourism can live together. And not only that, the power-intensive industry need electricity, and those power plants, they are in the highlands. For each project of this kind, you need roads. Those roads are now used by the tourists. So it is a possibility to use the infrastructure, actually in the beginning built up for the industry, to use later on for the tourist. And the grid system we have is very expensive. 1 kilometer of a power line costs approximately $350,000. $350,000. And we are talking about several of hundreds of kilometers. This is mainly paid by the foreign companies, the owners of this power-intensive industry. Icelanders are getting benefit of that. I will skip some slides, but there is a very important for Greenland to understand that industry is linked like a chain with other industries. Harbour, off-taker agreements has to be taken, raw materials is coming into Iceland, but here you have to take in labor forces. The grid system, the power plant, etc. Mining company is mainly interested in mining. They are not interested in running power plant or being owner of a grid or harbor. This is an opportunity for Greenland, like we did in Iceland. So I am pretty sure that Greenland mining companies, they can use Iceland partly for their undertaking. Pretreatment can be done here in remote fjords with relatively low portion of electricity. But then the material can be shipped over to Iceland for further treatment using the whole grid system and the cheap electricity. And not forget, Iceland is the only European country with free trade agreement with China. And nowadays, more than 50% of all metals go to China, taken out of earth. So I will only mention two things more because the bell is ringing. This is the airport of Keflavik. This is the future extension plan. Now, today, you can fly to 77 cities around the world from that airport. But there will be an investment needed during the next 20 years of the magnitude of 5.5 billion Danish crowns. And there is another project starting within few years, connecting this airport with the city of Reykjavik of the same magnitude. That will be totally private-driven project. We are doing the design, and we are looking for co-investors with us in this project. This is showing how Iceland is developing fast. Heiðar Guðjónsson earlier today mentioned the Dreki area and the oil fields there. That's very promising and could change Iceland as well. But take a note to the distance to Greenland. It's close by. Yep. So finally, I'm going to tell you about this Finnafjord project. I promised you, some of you. This is the future harbor project in Northeast Iceland. This will be the largest harbor project in the North Atlantic in future and could take in mining material from Greenland, oil from Greenland and Iceland, and cargo from China or other countries in Asia. Thank you.